No one understood the tires around the house, until winter came and Marcus Thompson watched the neighbors whispering behind their fences as he unloaded another pile of old tires in front of his modest wooden house. At 45, he knew everyone thought he was crazy, but something inside him screamed that he needed to continue. That's when his wife Jennifer appeared on the porch with that expression he knew so well. The same one she used when she discovered he had spent almost all their savings buying hundreds of used tires from Mr. Harold's junkyard. "Marcus, for God's sake, what do you think you're doing?" she shouted, coming down the 3 porch steps with her arms crossed. "The neighbors are saying you've completely lost it." Marcus stopped stacking the tires and turned to the woman who had shared his life for 20 years. Jennifer had her graying hair in a bun, and those brown eyes that used to look at him with love now showed only worry and shame. "Jennifer, I've already explained. These tires will protect us." "Protect us from what?" she retorted, gesturing toward the strange structure he had been building around the house. "Marcus, we've lived in Napa Valley for 20 years. Nothing has ever happened that required this wall of tires." Across the street, Mrs. Dorothy pretended to water her plants while listening to the argument. Marcus noticed the movement and lowered his voice. "Jennifer, you need to trust me. I know what I'm doing." "Know what?" she exploded. "Marcus, you work at a mechanic shop. You're not a meteorologist, not an engineer. Where is this crazy idea coming from?" Marcus approached his wife, trying to touch her arm, but she pulled away. "The signs are all there, Jennifer. The behavior of the birds, the way the cattle are grouping in the pastures, the atmospheric pressure. It's all wrong for this time of year." "Oh, so now you're the weatherman?" Jennifer rolled her eyes. "Marcus, for God's sake, listen to what you're saying." At that moment, Ethan and Noah, his 12 and 10-year-old sons, came running home from school. Ethan, the older one, stopped short upon seeing more tires piled in the yard. "Dad, again?" Ethan sighed, clearly embarrassed. Noah hid behind his older brother, avoiding his father's gaze. "Boys, go inside." "Now," ordered Jennifer. "But Mom," Ethan began. "Now." The boys obeyed, but Marcus noticed the look of disappointment in his son's eyes. That hurt more than any criticism from the neighbors. "See?" Jennifer pointed to the door where the children had disappeared. "Even the kids are embarrassed. Ethan told me his classmates are calling you the tire nut at school." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Being judged by adults was one thing, but knowing his children were suffering because of him was much worse. "Jennifer, I promise that when winter comes, you'll understand." "Marcus," she took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "Look, I talked to my sister Rachel. She said we can stay at her house in Portland for a while you sort this out." "Sort this out?" Marcus felt his irritation growing. "Jennifer, I'm not crazy. I'm trying to protect our family." "Protect us from what, Marcus? From what?" Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Marcus looked at the grey sky forming on the horizon. March was coming to an end and it was still warm during the day, but he felt something different in the air, something his instincts, honed over years of working outdoors, picked up better than any weather forecast. "Jennifer, when I was a kid." "Marcus, not that story again." "Let me finish." He raised his voice, then took a deep breath. "When I was 8 years old, we lived in a house just like this one in Lake Tahoe. My father thought he knew everything, that he didn't need to listen to anyone." Jennifer crossed her arms but remained silent. Then the winter of 1988 arrived. They started saying it would be severe, but my father said it was nonsense, that the house was strong, that we had enough firewood. Marcus stopped stacking tires and sat on one of them. The blizzard lasted 3 days. The house couldn't handle the weight of the snow on the roof. We lost everything, Jennifer. Everything. We had to live in a temporary shelter for 6 months. Marcus, that was over 30 years ago. And you think that changed anything? He stood up again. Jennifer, I won't let it happen again. Not with my family. Jennifer was silent for a few moments, watching her husband. There was something in his voice, an urgency she had never noticed before. But Marcus, even if you're right about the winter, how are some old tires going to protect us? Marcus walked over to the wall of tires he had already built on the side of the house. The tires create a thermal barrier. The air trapped between them works as insulation. Plus, they deflect the wind, preventing it from pulling heat from the house. And where did you get this theory? I read about it online. Some people use tires to build sustainable houses. It's not my invention. Jennifer approached the structure and touched one of the tires. Marcus, does this really work? It works. But I need to finish before the real cold arrives. At that moment, Mr. Harold, the owner of the tire yard, appeared with his loaded truck. Hey there, Marcus. Brought 200 more like you asked. Jennifer's eyes widened. 200? Marcus, how many tires do you plan to buy? As many as necessary, he replied simply. Mr. Harold got out of the truck, a 60-year-old man with a prominent belly and an ever-present smile. Mrs. Jennifer, your husband is making a smart investment. These tires are worth their weight in gold in the winter. How so? Jennifer asked. Well, I don't understand much of the technical part, but I know that when the cold hits hard, everyone comes looking for tires to burn to make windbreaks. Marcus is getting ahead of it. Marcus helped Mr. Harold unload the tires, stacking them methodically. Mr. Harold, you grew up here in the region. Have you seen a fierce winter? Son, I've seen it all. The worst was in '75. It snowed so much the road was closed for a week. A lot of people had a hard time. And this year? Do you feel something different? Mr. Harold stopped unloading and looked at the sky. You know, it's funny you mention that. The dogs have been acting strange for a few weeks. My female dog keeps digging holes under the porch like she wants to hide. Jennifer paid attention to the conversation, starting to realize that maybe her husband wasn't the only one sensing something strange in the air. And the little birds, Mr. Harold? Have you noticed their behavior? Wow, yes I have. They're disappearing earlier this year. They usually only migrate in May, but since February I haven't seen the kingbirds anymore. Marcus looked meaningfully at Jennifer, who remained silent. After Mr. Harold left, the couple continued stacking tires. Jennifer, still skeptical, decided to help her husband. Marcus, assuming you're right about the winter, why didn't you tell everyone all this before? Why let everyone think you'd gone crazy? Because Marcus stopped working. If I said I was doing this because of what happened in my childhood, they'd say it's trauma. If I talked about nature's signs, they'd say it's superstition. People only believe when they see. And if you're wrong? Marcus was silent for a moment. If I'm wrong, I'll take it all apart and apologize to everyone. But if I'm right and do nothing, I'll never forgive myself. At that moment, Mrs. Dorothy crossed the street toward their gate. She was a 70-year-old woman, thin and tall, known for knowing everything that happened in the neighborhood. Marcus, can I have a quick word with you both? Jennifer and Marcus exchanged glances. Of course, Mrs. Dorothy. What is it? Look, I don't usually meddle in other people's lives, but the neighbors are worried. Mr. Gerald said he's going to call City Hall if you don't remove that thing there. Marcus felt his irritation growing. Mrs. Dorothy, I'm not doing anything illegal. The tires are on my property. I know, son, but you understand this is drawing a lot of attention, right? And there are small children in the neighborhood. The parents are afraid it might be dangerous. Jennifer stepped forward. Mrs. Dorothy, I understand your concern, but Marcus is just trying to protect our family. Protect from what, dear? Marcus took a deep breath before answering. Mrs. Dorothy, do you remember the winter of '88? The neighbor's face changed immediately. How could I forget? I lost 3 frozen chickens and the roof of my house almost collapsed. Exactly. I think something similar is coming. Mrs. Dorothy looked at the sky, then at the tire structure. Marcus, do you really think it will be that bad? I think it will be worse. The neighbor fell silent for a few moments, observing the structure. And how will these tires help? Marcus explained the concept of thermal barrier and wind protection again. Mrs. Dorothy listened carefully. You know something, Marcus. My late husband always said that animals know things before we do. And in fact, my cat has been sleeping inside the house for weeks. He never did that in the summer. This observation made Jennifer pay even closer attention. That's right, Mrs. Dorothy. Our buddy has been acting strange too. Marcus felt encouraged seeing that the two women were starting to notice the signs. Did you see the gas station raise the price of firewood? Yes, I did, replied Mrs. Dorothy, and when I asked the seller, he said there was very high demand, people buying firewood in March. Because other people are also feeling that something isn't right, Marcus concluded. Mrs. Dorothy looked at the structure once more. Marcus, may I ask you a question? How much did all this cost? Jennifer and Marcus exchanged glances. About $4,000 so far, Marcus answered hesitantly. Wow, exclaimed the neighbor, that's a lot of money. It's the money we had saved to replace the roof, Jennifer added with a tone of regret. Mrs. Dorothy sensed the tension between the couple. Look, kids, I'm not going to pretend I understand meteorology or construction, but one thing I've learned in my 70 years, when someone is willing to spend their own resources to protect their family, they usually have a good reason. Marcus felt a bit relieved by the comment. Mrs. Dorothy, could you talk to the other neighbors? Explain that I'm not doing anything to harm anyone? I can try, Marcus, but you know how it is, right? Everyone has their own opinion. After Mrs. Dorothy left, Jennifer and Marcus continued working in silence. The sun was setting when Ethan and Noah came out of the house. Dad, can I help? Asked Noah timidly. Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. Of course you can, son. Come here. While teaching the boys how to stack tires correctly, Marcus took the opportunity to explain what he was doing. Do you know why the Inuit build igloos? To protect themselves from the cold, answered Ethan. Exactly. And do you know why ice protects from the cold? The boys shook their heads, because ice has air bubbles inside it. Bubbles. Hand air is an excellent thermal insulator. The tires work the same way. Everyone has air inside, and when we stack several together, we create a double layer of protection. Noah picked up a smaller tire and examined it. So it's like a giant winter coat for the house? That's right, champ, Marcus laughed, feeling happy to finally have someone trying to understand. Ethan, always more serious, asked another question. Dad, but if it's true that it's going to be very cold, why aren't other people doing the same? Marcus stopped working and crouched down to his son's height. Ethan, sometimes people are afraid to do something different, even when they know it might be right. It's easier to follow what everyone else does than to risk being called crazy. But aren't you afraid of being called crazy? I am, son. I'm very afraid. But I'm even more afraid of letting you guys get cold. Jennifer, who was listening to the conversation from a distance, felt her heart tighten. For the first time since Marcus started the project, she truly understood her husband's motivation. That night, after dinner, the family sat in the living room to watch television. The local news program was on when a report came on that caught everyone's attention. The National Weather Institute issued an alert today that autumn may be colder than normal in the northern region of the country. According to experts, a polar air mass more intense than usual could hit the region between May and June. Marcus and Jennifer exchanged a look. It's like you said, Dad, Ethan commented. It's still too early to confirm, Jennifer said cautiously. It might just be a possibility. But Marcus was already mentally calculating how much time he had to complete the house's protection. The next morning, Marcus woke up early and went out to examine the construction. He had completed about 60% of the protection around the house. He needed to speed up the work. He was stacking tires when Mr. Gerald, the grumpiest neighbor on the street, appeared at the gate. Marcus, I need to talk to you. Gerald was a 55-year-old man, retired from City Hall, known for complaining about everything. Good morning, Mr. Gerald. What is it? Son, I called City Hall yesterday about this tire situation. Marcus felt his stomach turn cold. And what did they say? Well, it's not illegal in principle, but they're going to send an inspector next week to check if there aren't any issues with material accumulation and fire risk. Mr. Gerald, the tires don't pose any risk. They're organized and... Marcus, that's not it. The problem is that this is devaluing our properties. Who's going to want to buy a house on a street where there's a crazy person stacking tires? Marcus felt anger rising. Crazy? Sorry, son, but that's what everyone is saying. Look, I know you're hardworking, a family man, but this idea doesn't make sense. Mr. Gerald, did you watch the news yesterday? I did. Then you saw the alert about the intense cold. Gerald shook his head dismissively. Marcus, they say the same thing every year. It's going to be cold, it's going to frost, it's going to snow, and usually nothing comes of it. Usually, Marcus repeated. But what if this time is different? If it's different, we'll manage like we always have. With blankets, a fireplace, a heater. That's how it's been our whole lives. Marcus realized it was no use arguing with Gerald. Mr. Gerald, I respect your opinion. I just ask that you respect mine too. Marcus, I'll be clear with you. If by next week you haven't started removing this, I'm going to organize a neighborhood petition asking City Hall to intervene. After Gerald left, Marcus stood still, looking at his construction. He knew he would face resistance, but he didn't imagine it would be so intense. Jennifer appeared on the porch with a cup of coffee. I heard the conversation. What are you going to do? I'm going to continue. Marcus, what if City Hall really forbids it? Then I'll have to obey, but until then, I'll do as much as I can. Jennifer went downstairs and handed the coffee to her husband. Marcus, last night I kept thinking about what you said about your childhood. You had never told me the details of what happened. Marcus drank his coffee and sat on a tire. It's hard to talk about it, Jennifer. It was a very bad time. Tell me. Please. Marcus took a deep breath before beginning. As I told you, we lived in Lake Tahoe. My father worked at a lumber mill, and my mother took care of the house. It was me and my younger sister, Amanda. Amanda? You never mentioned a sister. Marcus's face darkened. It's because... It's complicated. Jennifer realized she had touched on something painful, but didn't interrupt. The house was small, just like ours. Wood, clay tiles, nothing very sophisticated. When they started talking about the harsh winter, my father said it was old folks' talk to scare kids. Marcus stopped talking and stared at the horizon. Go on, Jennifer encouraged. The snow started on a Thursday morning. At first it was beautiful, you know. Amanda and I played in the backyard, but in the afternoon it started coming down heavier. Marcus stood up and began to pace as he spoke. By Friday morning the snow was up to the window. Dad tried to go out to buy supplies, but the door wouldn't open. We were trapped. And what did you do? At first, Dad kept calm. Said it was a matter of hours until the snow stopped. But it didn't stop. It kept snowing until Sunday. Marcus stopped walking and looked at Jennifer. Jennifer, on Sunday morning we heard a terrible noise, like something was slowly breaking. It was the roof giving way under the weight of the snow. My God! Dad yelled for everyone to get under the kitchen table. We stayed there, holding each other, listening to the house groan around us. Jennifer moved closer and touched her husband's arm. When the roof collapsed, it was a sound I'll never forget, like the world was ending. And suddenly, everything was white. The snow came into the house and covered everything. How did you get out? Dad dug a tunnel to the back door. We managed to get out, but we lost everything. Clothes, food, furniture. Everything buried. Marcus sat down again. We went to my grandparents' house, who lived in town. We stayed there 6 months until we could get back on our feet. And your sister? What happened to her? Marcus was silent for a long time. Amanda got sick after what happened. Pneumonia. Since we didn't have money for private treatment and the public system was overwhelmed because of the emergency. He stopped talking, clearly emotional. She didn't make it, Jennifer. She was only 5. Jennifer felt her eyes fill with tears. Marcus, I didn't know. My parents never recovered. They separated the following year. Dad was never the same again. He kept blaming himself for what happened. Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. That's why I can't take risks, Jennifer. I can't let anything happen to you or the boys because of a lack of preparation. Jennifer hugged her husband without saying anything. She finally understood the urgency he felt, the desperation that motivated him. Why did you never tell me this before? Because it's hard to admit you're afraid, and because I hoped I'd never have to worry about it again. They held each other for a few minutes until Ethan came running. Dad, Mom, there's a truck stopping out front. Marcus and Jennifer separated, and saw a large truck parking in front of the house. On the side was written City Hall Inspection. A middle-aged man got out of the truck carrying a clipboard. "Good morning, I'm Inspector Brian Thompson. I'm here to check on a complaint about irregular material accumulation." Marcus stepped forward. "Good morning, I'm Marcus Thompson, the homeowner." "Mr. Marcus, I received a complaint about tires piled up in a residential area. May I check the situation?" "Of course, the tires are all here on my property." The inspector began examining the structure, making notes on his clipboard. "Mr. Marcus, how many tires are here?" "About 800 so far." 800, the inspector repeated, clearly surprised. "And what is the purpose?" Marcus explained the concept of thermal protection again. The inspector listened carefully. "Look, Mr. Marcus, technically there's no violation of the urban code. The tires are on private property and organized in a structured way." Marcus felt relieved. "But," the inspector continued, "there is a fire safety issue. Piled tires can pose a risk in case of fire. How can I resolve this? You need to maintain firefighter access all around the entire structure, and it would be advisable to have fire extinguishers available." "I can do that." The inspector made a few more notes. "Mr. Marcus, may I ask a personal question? Do you really believe this will work?" "I do." The inspector looked at the sky, which was starting to get cloudy. "You know, my grandfather was an amateur meteorologist. He always said animals know things before we do, and lately my dog has been acting very strange." Jennifer approached the conversation. "Strange how?" "Digging holes in the yard, sleeping inside the house, hiding under the bed. Behavior he only had when he was a puppy and was afraid of thunder." Marcus and Jennifer exchanged a significant look. "Have you seen this before?" Marcus asked. "Only once, in the winter of '88. That's when my grandfather taught me to pay attention to the signs." The inspector finished his notes and put away the clipboard. "Mr. Marcus, officially I need to inform you there is no irregularity in your structure, provided you follow the safety recommendations. Unofficially, well, maybe you're not as crazy as the neighbors think." After the inspector left, Marcus felt a bit more confident. At least he wouldn't be forced to take it all down. But the situation in the neighborhood remained tense. During the afternoon, he noticed a group of neighbors talking on the corner, obviously discussing his structure. That evening during dinner, Ethan made a comment that worried Marcus. "Dad, today at school the science teacher talked about climate change. He said extreme events are becoming more common." "Really?" Jennifer showed interest. He explained that when the ocean water temperature changes, it can cause stronger storms and cold waves. Noah, who had been quiet all day, also spoke up. "Dad, I told my teacher about the tires. She said she wanted to talk to you." "Talk about what?" Marcus asked worriedly. "She didn't say, just said she wanted to understand the project better." The next day, Marcus received a phone call from the school. "Hello, Mr. Marcus. This is Mrs. Anderson, Noah's teacher. Could you come to the school this afternoon? I'd like to talk about the project your son mentioned." Marcus was apprehensive, imagining it would be just another person to criticize his decision. In the afternoon, he went to the school. Mrs. Anderson was a friendly and interested woman in her 40s. "Mr. Marcus, thank you for coming. Noah told me about your tire structure. I confess I was curious." "Teacher, I hope this isn't a complaint. I'm not doing anything illegal." "On the contrary," she smiled. "I'm a science teacher, and I became interested in the scientific aspect of the project. May I see it?" Marcus was surprised by the positive reaction. "Of course, we can go now if you'd like." On the way to his house, Marcus explained the physical principles behind the idea. The teacher asked several technical questions. "Mr. Marcus, did you study engineering?" "No, just high school, but I've always enjoyed reading about science." "Interesting, because the concept is correct. Tires really can work as thermal insulation." When they arrived at the house, the teacher carefully examined the construction. "Mr. Marcus, this is very clever. You've created multiple layers of insulating air." Jennifer, who was watering the plants, approached. "Mrs. Anderson, what a surprise. Hi, Jennifer. I came to see your husband's project. I'm impressed. Do you really think it will work?" If it's as I imagine, it will work very well. In fact, the teacher hesitated. May I make a suggestion? Of course, Marcus replied. How about using this as an educational project? I could bring my students to see and learn about thermal insulation, applied physics. Marcus was excited by the idea. That would be great. Maybe then people would better understand what I'm doing. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The following week, Mrs. Anderson brought a class of 15 students to visit the project. Marcus explained the scientific concepts in simple terms, and the students asked many interesting questions. Mr. Marcus, asked a 12-year-old student, did you invent this yourself? I didn't invent it, Emily. I adapted an existing technique. The important thing is to observe nature and apply science in daily life. The students' visit caught the neighbors' attention. Some came out to see what was happening and ended up listening to Marcus's explanations. Mrs. Dorothy approached and spoke with the teacher. Teacher, does what Marcus is doing really make sense? A lot of sense, Mrs. Dorothy. It's applied physics in a smart way. This validation from an educator began to change some neighbors' perception. Not all, but some began to see the project in a new light. During the second week of April, Marcus noticed a subtle change in the weather. The nights were getting colder earlier, and the wind had a different quality. Mr. Harold appeared with another load of tires. Marcus, did you know more people have started wanting to buy tires for windbreaks? Really? Yes, really. Just yesterday, a couple from the rural area came. They said their animals are acting strange and decided to take precautions. Marcus felt a little relieved to know he wasn't the only one concerned. Mr. Harold, have you noticed if the wild animals have disappeared? Wow, yes, I have. I haven't seen a bird on my property in over a month, and there were always plenty. This observation once again confirmed Marcus's suspicions. That afternoon, he was finishing the north wall of the house when a car stopped in front of the gate. A man of about 60, thin with white hair, got out. Excuse me, are you Marcus Thompson? Yes, I am. How can I help you? My name is Dr. Richard Anderson. I'm a retired meteorologist. I heard about your project through a colleague from the school. Marcus was surprised. Meteorologist? That's right. I worked at the National Weather Institute for 30 years. I'd like to see your construction, if you'll allow it. Marcus led him around the house, explaining the concept. Dr. Richard made several technical observations. Mr. Marcus, may I ask you some questions about what motivated you to do this? Marcus told him about the signs he had observed in nature and about his childhood experience. Interesting, Doctor, Richard commented. Because I've been observing the same signs, and I have access to data that isn't publicly released. What kind of data? Dr. Richard looked around before answering. Mr. Marcus, can I be frank with you? The climatic situation this year is very atypical. We have altered ocean currents, unstable atmospheric pressure, and a polar air mass forming in Canada that is larger than anything recorded in the last 50 years. Marcus felt a chill. What does that mean? It means that when this air mass moves up to the United States, it will cause a very rapid and very intense temperature drop. When? By my calculations, between late April and early May. Marcus did the math mentally. It was mid-April. Dr. Richard, do you think my protection will be enough? The meteorologist examined the construction again. For what's coming, it will be more than enough. It will be the difference between comfort and suffering. And why isn't this information being released? Because causing panic solves nothing, and because it's not possible to be absolutely certain until the air mass is in motion. Dr. Richard stepped back a little and looked at the whole house. Mr. Marcus, you've done exceptional work here. When the cold arrives, this may be the best protected house in the region. This validation from an expert made Marcus more confident, but also more concerned about the deadline. Dr. Richard, could you help me with something? Anything. Convince my wife that it's worth accelerating the project. She still has doubts. Dr. Richard smiled. Of course. Where is she? Jennifer was in the kitchen preparing dinner when Marcus brought Dr. Richard inside. Jennifer, this is Dr. Richard Anderson. a retired meteorologist. "A pleasure, Doctor," Dr. Richard greeted. "The pleasure is mine. Would you like some coffee?" "I'll have some, thank you." While Jennifer prepared the coffee, Dr. Richard explained his analysis of the weather situation. "Mrs. Jennifer, your husband isn't just sensible, he's visionary. What he's done here could save lives." "Save lives?" Jennifer stopped stirring the coffee. "Mrs. Jennifer, when the temperature drops 30 degrees in a few hours, people are not prepared. Heating systems fail, pipes freeze, structures give way under the weight of ice." Jennifer sat at the table with them. "Doctor, do you really believe it will be that serious?" "Mrs. Jennifer, I've worked in meteorology for 40 years. I've never seen such worrying data. If I were in your husband's position, I'd be doing exactly the same thing." "And what else can we do to prepare?" Dr. Richard thought for a moment. "Stock up on non-perishable food, drinking water, candles, batteries, medicine, and most importantly, fuel for heating. Fuel. Firewood, coal, gas, anything that can generate heat if the electricity fails." Jennifer looked at Marcus. "Have you thought about that?" "Yes, I have, but first I wanted to finish protecting the house." Dr. Richard got up to leave. "Mr. Marcus, may I make a suggestion? Finish the protection in the next few days, then focus on supplies and—" He hesitated. "It might be good to talk to close neighbors. In extreme situations, community cooperation is essential." After Dr. Richard left, Marcus and Jennifer talked about what they had heard. "Marcus, now I'm really worried." "Jennifer, we're going to be okay. We've already done the hardest part." "But what about the boys? What if it's really as bad as he said?" Marcus took his wife's hand. "That's why I started all this, Jennifer, to make sure our family is safe." That night, they talked to Ethan and Noah about the need to prepare for a harsh winter. "Boys, in the coming weeks, you're going to see us buying a lot of things and organizing the house differently. It's because it might get very cold this year." "Colder than last year?" asked Noah. "Much colder," Marcus replied. Ethan, always more mature, asked a worrying question. "Dad, what if our friends need help?" Marcus and Jennifer exchanged a look. "Ethan, if anyone needs help, we'll do what we can, but first we need to make sure our own family is safe." The next day, Marcus decided to speed up the work. He called his brother-in-law, Kevin, Jennifer's brother, to help. Kevin arrived late in the morning with a skeptical expression. "Marcus, Jennifer told me about your project. Can you explain what all this is?" Kevin was an electrician, a practical 35-year-old man. Marcus hoped he would better understand the logic of the construction. After explaining the concepts, Kevin examined the structure. "Marcus, this is really smart. You've created a multi-layer insulation system." "So, you think it can work?" "It can work very well. In fact, I can suggest an improvement." "What kind of improvement?" "If you connect electrical wires between some of the tires, you can create additional heating points, like a shower heating element, you know." Marcus got excited about the idea. "Won't that use too much power?" "Not if it's well calculated, and it will be much more efficient than conventional heaters because the heat will be trapped between the tires." The two worked together all afternoon, installing a basic electric heating system. Jennifer brought them a snack and took the opportunity to talk with her brother. "Kevin, do you think Marcus is right about the cold that's coming?" "Jennifer, I don't understand meteorology, but I understand physics, and I can guarantee you that if it does get really cold, you'll be very well protected here. And you don't want to do something similar at your place?" Kevin lived in a small apartment in the city. "Jennifer, even if I wanted to, I wouldn't have the space. You can't do this in an apartment. Maybe I'll ask to come spend a few days here with you if things get rough." This conversation made Jennifer realize they were in a privileged position to face what was coming. Over the following days, Marcus and Kevin worked intensely to complete the house's protection. The tire structure now completely surrounded the building, creating a barrier almost 2 meters high. The neighbors watched the progress with mixed reactions. Some were beginning to show curiosity, others maintained their skepticism. Mr. Gerald continued to be the most vocal in his opposition. "Marcus, this has turned into a fortress. It looks like you're preparing for war." "Mr. Gerald, I just want to protect my family." "Protect them from what, Marcus? From what?" Marcus was tired of repeating the same explanation. but he tried once more. "From the cold, Mr. Gerald. From the extreme cold that might come. Marcus, we've always faced winter around here. We've never needed anything like this. But what if this year is different?" Gerald shook his head dismissively. "If it's different, we adapt, like we always have." Marcus realized it was useless to insist. At the end of April, Dr. Richard appeared again. "Mr. Marcus, I have news, and it's not good." "What happened?" "The polar air mass is moving faster than predicted, and it's more intense." Marcus felt a chill in his stomach. "When will it arrive?" "According to the latest data, it could be as early as the first week of May." That's very early." "Yes, it is, and there's more. The temperature could drop by up to 40 degrees in some regions." Marcus did the math. A 40-degree difference meant places that normally had positive 20 degrees could reach negative 20 degrees. "Dr. Richard, that's polar region temperature." "Exactly. That's why your preparation is so important." That night, Marcus talked with the family about the new forecasts. "Everyone will need to speed up our preparation. The cold might arrive earlier than we expected." "How much earlier?" asked Jennifer. "Next week." "Next week?" Ethan exclaimed. "But that's hardly any time." "That's why we're going to work together to get ready." Over the next few days, the family organized themselves to stock up on supplies. They bought non-perishable food, bottled water, candles, batteries, basic medicine, and heating fuel. Jennifer organized the purchases methodically. "Marcus, how many days do you think it could last?" "I don't know. Maybe a week, maybe more." "Then let's prepare for 2 weeks to have a safety margin." While shopping at the supermarket, they noticed other people were also buying more supplies than usual. "Seems we're not the only ones worried," Jennifer commented. Indeed, the shelves of canned food and essential products were emptier than usual. At the butcher shop, the owner, Mr. Howard, made a revealing comment. "Marcus, a lot of people have been coming here asking for meat to freeze, and firewood too. I've never seen demand like this in April." "People are preparing for the cold," Marcus explained. "It must be because of those news stories online about the polar air mass. Folks are getting nervous." "Mr. Howard, do you remember the winter of '88? "Oh, how could I forget? We lost almost all the cattle. I wasn't prepared for that cold." "And this year, are you preparing?" "Yes, I am. I've already had the animal pens reinforced and bought extra feed. I won't be caught off guard again." This conversation confirmed for Marcus that more experienced people were taking the situation seriously. Back home, they found Mrs. Dorothy waiting at the gate. "Marcus, Jennifer, can I talk to you?" "Of course, Mrs. Dorothy, what is it?" "Look, I've been watching you buy supplies and organize the house, and I've been thinking about what that doctor said last week." "And what have you decided?" "That maybe it's better for me to prepare too. The problem is I live alone and don't really know what to do." Jennifer stepped forward. "Mrs. Dorothy, do you want our help?" "If it's not too much trouble." "Of course not," Marcus replied. "You've been our neighbor for 20 years. That afternoon, they helped Mrs. Dorothy organize her house to face the cold. Since she couldn't afford a protection with tires, Marcus suggested alternatives. "Mrs. Dorothy, you can use old blankets to seal gaps in the windows, and it would be good to concentrate everything in just one room to conserve heat. And supplies. We can share. We bought for 2 weeks. We can include one more person." Mrs. Dorothy was moved by the solidarity. "You are angels. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank us. In difficult situations, we need to help each other." That afternoon, Marcus noticed movement at Mr. Gerald's house. The neighbor was unloading bags of something from his car. Curious, he approached. "Hi, Mr. Gerald. What are you unloading?" Gerald stopped working with an embarrassed expression. "Oh, hi, Marcus. It's just a bit of charcoal." "Charcoal? For what?" "Well, it's just that my wife got worried about this cold weather news. She decided it was better to have extra fuel just in case." Marcus smiled inwardly but kept a neutral tone. "It's a good precaution, Mr. Gerald. Marcus, can I ask you a question?" "Sure." "Those tires over there, will they really make a difference?" Marcus realized that finally Gerald was taking the situation seriously. "Mr. Gerald, I believe so. But we'll only know for sure when the cold arrives." Gerald looked at the construction around Marcus's house. And there's no way to do something similar quickly. Marcus thought for a moment. Mr. Gerald, there's no time to do the same, but I can help you protect at least part of the house. You would do that, even after I complained so much. Of course, Mr. Gerald. We're neighbors. For the rest of the week, Marcus helped Gerald and other neighbors make improvised protections for their houses. It was nothing compared to his construction, but it was better than nothing. Mrs. Anderson brought more students to see the project, now completely finished. Mr. Marcus, this is impressive. It's like a thermal cocoon around the house. Mrs. Anderson, it was months of work. I hope I never have to find out if it really works. From the weather data I've been seeing, you'll find out very soon. That night, Marcus received an unexpected call. Hello, Marcus. This is Dr. Richard. Hi, Doctor. Good to hear from you. Marcus, I'm calling to warn you. The polar air mass has started to move. It should arrive there tomorrow night. Marcus felt his heart race. Tomorrow night? So soon? Unfortunately, yes. The temperature will start dropping drastically from 6 p.m. And how much will it drop? Marcus, according to the latest data, it could reach 15 degrees below zero in your region. Marcus had to sit down. 15 below? Doctor, that's Arctic temperature. Yes, it is. That's why your preparation is so crucial. Keep everyone indoors, conserve heating fuel, and only go out if it's absolutely necessary. For how long? The air mass is expected to remain stationary for 5 to 7 days. After hanging up the phone, Marcus gathered the family. Everyone, Dr. Richard just called, the extreme cold arrives tomorrow night. Tomorrow? Jennifer's eyes widened. Yes, and it will be 15 degrees below zero. Dad, is that very cold? Asked Noah. It's colder than a freezer, son. Ethan, who was doing homework, looked up. Dad, what about the other families? What if they aren't prepared? Marcus looked at his children with pride. Even in a worrying situation, they thought of others. Ethan, tomorrow morning we'll warn all the neighbors. Anyone who wants to take shelter here with us is welcome. But Marcus, Jennifer intervened, how many people do we have space and supplies for? For as many as need it, Jennifer, we'll manage. That night, none of them slept well. Marcus stayed awake, checking and rechecking all the preparations. The next morning, he went out early to warn the neighbors about the forecast. The first stop was Mrs. Dorothy's house. Mrs. Dorothy, the cold arrives tonight. Would you like to come spend a few days with us? Oh, Marcus, do you think it's necessary? Mrs. Dorothy, it's going to be 15 degrees below zero. Your house doesn't have enough insulation. The neighbor's face turned pale. 15 below zero, but that's something out of a movie. Unfortunately, it's not, Mrs. Dorothy. It's real, and it's today. She hesitated no more. Let me grab a few things and I'll be right over. The next stop was Mr. Gerald's house. Mr. Gerald, I came to warn you that the extreme cold arrives today. If you need shelter, our house is available. Gerald, who had spent the night organizing his own provisions, was surprised by the offer. Marcus, after everything I said against your project, you're offering help. Mr. Gerald, in difficult times, past disagreements don't matter. What matters is helping each other. The neighbor was clearly moved. Marcus, thank you very much. I'll see how the situation develops and maybe accept your offer. Marcus visited every house on the street, offering shelter to anyone who needed it. Some families accepted immediately. Others wanted to try to face it alone first. Around 4 in the afternoon, the temperature had already started to drop. Marcus measured it with a thermometer, from 72 degrees at noon to 46 degrees at 4 p.m. At 5 p.m., strong winds began. A cold wind like Marcus had never felt before. Everyone, he called the family. It's starting. Everybody inside the house. At 6 p.m., the temperature was at 32 degrees, and it kept falling. Jennifer looked out the window. Marcus, ice is forming on the neighbor's pool water. At 7 p.m., it began to sleet. Small grains of ice that made noise as they hit the windows. At 8 in the evening, the temperature was at 5 degrees below zero. Marcus turned on the heating system that Kevin had installed between the tires. Immediately, the internal temperature of the house stabilized. Wow, exclaimed Ethan. It's working. Outside, they could hear the wind howling between the tires. But inside the house, it was warm and safe. At 9 in the evening, there was a knock at the door. "Marcus!" It was Mr. Gerald's voice. "Please, I need help." Marcus opened the door and found Gerald with his wife and 2 small children, all shivering from the cold. "Our house's heating broke down," Gerald explained, "and the temperature inside is almost the same as outside." "Come in quickly," Marcus said, helping the family inside. An hour later, a young family from the corner arrived with a baby just a few months old. "Marcus, please, our house doesn't have enough heating to keep the baby warm." "Of course, come in." During the night, more neighbors kept arriving. Marcus's house turned into an improvised shelter. Jennifer organized people into the rooms, distributed blankets, and prepared hot food for everyone. "Marcus," she whispered to her husband, "look at this." In the end, everyone understood. Marcus observed his living room full of neighbors who just a few weeks earlier had called him crazy. It's a shame it took going through this for them to believe. During the early morning hours, the external temperature reached 15 degrees below zero, exactly as Dr. Richard had predicted. Inside the house protected by the tires, everyone was warm and safe. In the morning, Marcus went out to assess the damage outside. What he saw left him stunned. Most houses in the neighborhood showed signs of trouble: windows with ice, pipes burst from freezing, roofs damaged by the weight of accumulated ice. His house, protected by the wall of tires, had no damage at all. Mrs. Dorothy, watching from her window, made a comment that summed up everyone's feeling. "Marcus, you weren't crazy, you were wise, and we were foolish not to believe." Mr. Gerald approached Marcus. "Marcus, I owe you an apology. And more than that, I owe you gratitude. If it weren't for you, I don't know what would have happened to my family." Mrs. Anderson managed to get to the house with special equipment from the school to measure temperature. "Mr. Marcus, this is incredible. Outside, it's 15 degrees below zero. In here, it's 22 degrees above, a difference of 37 degrees. Mrs. Anderson, so the system really works. It works perfectly. You've created a microclimate completely isolated from the outside." During the first 3 days of the cold wave, Marcus's house sheltered 16 people from 7 different families. Jennifer and the other women organized themselves to cook in shifts. The children played together, turning the difficult situation into a sort of indoor camping. Marcus and the other men took turns monitoring the heating systems and making small repairs when necessary. On the 3rd day, Mr. Harold managed to get to the house with his ice-adapted truck. "Marcus, how are you all?" "We're fine, Mr. Harold. And you?" "Son, it was tough. I lost some head of cattle, but overall I prepared well." "And you? Did the tire system work?" "Worked perfectly. We have 16 people sheltered here, and everyone is warm and well fed." Mr. Harold observed the house. "Marcus, this has become an example. People all over town are talking about your preparation." "All over town?" "Yes, indeed, it even made the local paper. Man predicts extreme cold and saves neighborhood with tire construction." Marcus was surprised. He hadn't imagined his story would have repercussions beyond the neighborhood. "Mr. Harold, how is the rest of the town?" "Complicated, Marcus. Many homes with plumbing issues, power outages in some neighborhoods, displaced people. City Hall had to open emergency shelters." This information made Marcus realize the scale of what had happened. On the 4th day, Dr. Richard managed to visit the house. "Mr. Marcus, I came to check how you all fared through the situation." "Doctor, thank God, very well. The system worked exactly as we expected." Dr. Richard examined the house and took temperature measurements. "Mr. Marcus, this is a case study. The thermal efficiency you achieved is extraordinary." "Doctor, how much longer will the cold last?" "According to the latest data, another 2 or 3 days, then the temperature should gradually return to normal." "And long term? Could it happen again?" Dr. Richard hesitated before answering. "Mr. Marcus, with climate change, extreme events like this may become more common. What you did here could be a model for other communities." At that moment, Marcus realized that his traumatic childhood experience had been transformed into something positive, not just for his family, but for the entire community. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. On the 5th day, the situation began to improve. The temperature rose to 5 degrees below zero, still very cold, but less extreme. Some of the sheltered families were able to return to their homes to assess the damage and make basic repairs. Marcus organized volunteer crews to help neighbors fix plumbing and heating problems. "Marcus," said Gerald, while they worked together to repair a burst pipe, "how can we thank you for all this?" "Mr. Gerald, no need to thank me. The important thing is that everyone is okay." "No, Marcus, this goes beyond being okay. You taught us something important." "What's that?" "That sometimes wisdom seems like madness, and that we should listen when someone is trying to protect us, even if we don't understand at first." On the 6th day, journalists from the region arrived to document the story. A reporter from the local television station interviewed Marcus. "Mr. Marcus, how did you know the cold would be so intense?" "By observing nature and paying attention to the signs, and also because of an experience I had in childhood." "Do you consider yourself a hero?" "No. I consider myself just a family man who wanted to protect those he loves." "And what message do you have for other people?" Marcus thought for a moment before answering. "That we should trust our instincts, and that when someone is trying to prepare us for a hardship, it's worth listening, even if it seems exaggerated." Mrs. Anderson was also interviewed. "Teacher, what did you think of Mr. Marcus's solution?" "It was brilliant. He applied basic scientific principles in a creative and efficient way. This should be taught in schools as an example of applied physics." During the following week, as the temperature returned to normal, Marcus received dozens of visits from people interested in learning about his system. A group of engineers from the regional university came to study the construction. "Mr. Marcus, we would like to document your technique to include in our studies on sustainable construction." "Of course. If this can help other people, I'm happy to share." One of the engineers took several measurements and calculations. "Mr. Marcus, the thermal efficiency you achieved is comparable to much more expensive and complex industrial systems. And is it a technique anyone can apply?" "With proper adaptations, yes. The concept is simple, but you had the intuition to apply it correctly." City Hall also became interested in the project. The mayor visited the house accompanied by a technical team. "Mr. Marcus, I would like to propose a partnership." "What kind of partnership?" "To create a municipal program for climate emergency preparedness based on your method. Would you be willing to teach the technique to other residents?" Marcus looked at Jennifer, who nodded positively. "Of course, Mr. Mayor. It would be an honor to help." "Excellent. We will organize courses and provide subsidized materials for interested families." In the following weeks, Marcus became a sort of informal consultant for climate emergency preparedness. Mr. Harold expanded his business, creating a specialized line of tires for thermal protection. "Marcus, I never imagined I'd become an expert in home heating." Mrs. Anderson developed an educational project based on the experience. "Mr. Marcus, your children have become the most popular students in school. Everyone wants to know about their father who saved the neighborhood." Ethan and Noah, once embarrassed, were now proud of their father. "Dad," said Ethan one night during dinner, "I learned something important from all this." "What was it, son?" "That being different isn't being crazy. It's being brave enough to do what's right, even when no one understands." Marcus felt his eyes well up. "That is one of life's most important lessons, Ethan." Noah also wanted to contribute. "Dad, now when someone at school says an idea is crazy, I'll ask, crazy like my dad's tires?" The whole family laughed. Mrs. Dorothy became a fierce advocate of Marcus's method. "Anyone who wants to know how to prepare for an emergency talks to me first. I'll tell them how Marcus saved us." 2 months after the event, Dr. Richard brought official data about what had happened. "Mr. Marcus, may I share some numbers with you?" "Of course, Doctor." During that week, the region recorded the lowest temperature in 50 years. Several houses had structural damage. Hundreds of families needed temporary emergency shelters. Marcus listened attentively. "But on your street specifically, there were no hospitalizations for hypothermia, no serious cold-related accidents, and minimal material damage. Is that because of the cooperation between neighbors? That too, but mainly because you created a refuge point that allowed the entire local community to get through the critical period safely. Dr. Richard paused. Mr. Marcus, statistically speaking, you saved lives. This information impacted Marcus deeply. He had started the project thinking only of his family, but ended up protecting many more people. At the end of the year, the city organized an event to honor Marcus. During the ceremony, the mayor gave a speech. Marcus Thompson taught us that preparedness is not paranoia, it is wisdom, and that when someone is willing to help others, even when not understood, they are doing the noblest work there is. Marcus was invited to speak to the audience. When I started this project, many people thought I had lost my mind, including moments when I doubted myself. But I learned that sometimes we need to trust our instincts, even when they go against majority opinion. He looked at Jennifer and his sons in the audience. I also learned that family is what motivates us to overcome our fears, and that community is what makes our protection truly effective. Marcus paused before continuing. If there is one lesson I want to leave, it is this. Don't be afraid of being called different when you are trying to protect those you love, and always remember that our duty is to take care of each other. The audience gave a standing ovation. After the ceremony, Marcus spoke with journalists. Mr. Marcus, do you plan to write a book about your experience? Actually, my wife had that idea. We are organizing a practical manual for climate emergency preparedness. And what about the future? Do you plan to keep the tire protection? Marcus smiled. The tires are now part of our home. But more important than that, we learned to always be attentive to the signs and always ready to help our neighbors. In the following months, Marcus's story spread to other regions. Communities in various cities began implementing similar systems. His method was adapted for different climates and local conditions. In some regions, they used tires against floods, in others against strong winds. A year after the event, Marcus received a special letter. It was from a family in a distant city who had used his method to protect themselves from a severe storm. Mr. Marcus, we want to thank you for sharing your idea. Our tire system protected our home from 75 mph winds. Our neighbors, who initially laughed at our construction, now want to do the same. You taught us that preparation is an act of love. Jennifer, reading the letter along with Marcus, commented, Marcus, do you realize what you've accomplished? You turned a traumatic experience from your childhood into something that is helping families across the entire country. Jennifer, I think that's what finally healed me from the trauma, knowing that I can now use that bad experience to do good things. Ethan, now 13, had developed an interest in meteorology and engineering. Dad, when I grow up, I want to study to improve your technique even further. And I want to study to teach people how to prepare for emergencies, added Noah. Marcus looked at his sons with pride. You both learned the most important lesson. Turn difficult experiences into opportunities to help others. During the second winter after the event, the region did not face extreme cold, but several families kept their protections as a precaution. Mr. Gerald became one of the biggest advocates for preventive preparation. Marcus was right from the start. It's better to be prepared for something that doesn't happen than to not be prepared for something that does. Mrs. Dorothy, now 71, also kept her home prepared. After 70, you learn that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and that we should listen to the advice of those who care about us. Anderson included Marcus's story in the school curriculum as a case study in applied science and community cooperation. Children, Mr. Marcus taught us that science isn't just theory. It's knowledge we can use to protect our family and our community. Dr. Richard continued to follow the project's developments. Mr. Marcus, your technique has been studied at universities in 3 different countries. You have become an international reference in residential thermal protection. Doctor, this all started with just a father worried about protecting his family. It's amazing how things evolve. It's proof that innovation can come from anywhere, especially from those with a real motivation to solve a problem. 2 years later, Marcus was invited to speak at a national convention on climate change. During his presentation, He told the whole story, from the traumatic childhood memories to the moment the entire community took shelter in his home. Preparing for climate change is not just the responsibility of governments or big companies, it's the responsibility of each one of us. And it starts with observation, preparation, and community cooperation. An audience participant asked a question. "Mr. Marcus, what was the most difficult moment of the entire process?" Marcus thought carefully before answering. "The most difficult moment was when my own family doubted me. When you're trying to protect the ones you love and they don't understand your motivation, it's very painful. And how did you overcome that?" "With patience and persistence, and above all, proving through actions that my concern was legitimate." What advice would you give to someone facing a similar situation? Don't give up on protecting your family, even when you're not understood. But also, have patience to explain and educate. And remember, the goal isn't to be right. The goal is to keep people safe. After the lecture, several participants approached to speak personally with Marcus. A 60-year-old woman made a comment that touched him deeply. "Mr. Marcus, my husband died in an accident that could have been avoided if he had been properly prepared. Your story gave me the courage to be more vigilant about my family's safety." "Ma'am, I'm very sorry for your loss, but I'm glad our experience can help you in some way. You turned a personal tragedy into prevention for other families. That is very noble." Marcus arrived home from that trip with an even clearer perspective on the impact of his story. Jennifer noticed he was thoughtful. "How was the lecture?" "Jennifer, I realized something important today." "What was it?" "Our story isn't just about surviving extreme cold. It's about how to turn difficult experiences into wisdom that can help others. And do you think we've managed to do that?" Marcus looked around his home, still protected by the tires that now also served as hanging gardens. "I think so, and I think we're still just at the beginning." 3 years after the original event, Marcus and Jennifer officially launched their emergency preparedness manual. The book, titled Nature's Signs: How a Simple Family Can Prepare for Climate Change, became a regional bestseller. During the launch, Ethan, now 15, gave a speech. "My parents taught me that true love sometimes means doing things other people don't understand. It means being willing to be called crazy if that's what it takes to protect your family." Noah, 13, also wanted to speak. "And that after you protect your family, your responsibility is to help other families protect themselves too." The local community attended the launch in large numbers. Mr. Gerald bought the first copy. "Marcus, this is a debt I owed you. Not just the money for the book, but the public recognition of what you did for all of us." Mrs. Dorothy was also present. "Marcus, you saved my life that winter. This book will save the lives of many other people." During the book signing, a young mother approached with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Marcus, I read the excerpts from your book that were published in the newspaper. My son is the same age yours was when you started the project. I want to learn to protect him like you protected your family." "Ma'am, the most important thing isn't to copy exactly what I did. The most important thing is to develop the sensitivity to perceive when your family needs protection and to have the courage to act." That night, Marcus reflected on the journey. "Jennifer, do you remember when it all began? When you thought I had lost my mind?" "I remember perfectly, and I remember how bad I felt for doubting you. You shouldn't feel bad, it was natural to doubt. What was strange was me being so certain about something no one else saw." "And where do you think that certainty came from?" Marcus thought for a moment. "I think it came from love. When you truly love someone, you develop a special sensitivity to perceive threats. It's as if my paternal instinct sharpened my perception." "And what else did you learn from all this?" "That traumatic experiences can turn into wisdom, that community is stronger than individualism, and that sometimes the person who seems most wrong is the one who is most right." Jennifer approached and hugged her husband. "Marcus, I've learned that having a husband who protects me, even when I don't understand how, is a blessing." 4 years after the event, Marcus was contacted by international researchers studying community adaptation to climate change. A team from the university visited his home to document the project. "Mr. Thompson, you've created a model that is being replicated in several countries. How does it feel to be a worldwide reference? I feel honored, but mainly responsible. I know many people are trusting in ideas that started here in our home. Do you have plans to expand the work? Yes, we are creating a foundation to teach community preparedness techniques to low-income families. How so? Marcus explained the project. We realize that many families would like to prepare for emergencies but don't have the resources. Our foundation will provide subsidized materials and free training. Jennifer, who now coordinated the administrative part of the project, added, "We also want to work with schools, teaching children from an early age about preparedness and community cooperation." Ethan, who was studying environmental engineering, presented his part of the project. "I'm developing adapted versions of my father's system for different climate regions. Tires against floods in the southern states, against strong winds on the coast." Noah, interested in communication, also had his contribution. "And I'm creating educational materials to teach the techniques in a simple and fun way." The research team was impressed with the involvement of the whole family in the project. "You've turned a personal initiative into a family mission. It's because we understand our responsibility goes beyond our own safety," Marcus explained. "When you receive the gift of protecting your family, you also receive the responsibility to help other families protect themselves." 5 years after the original event, the city declared the day that Cold Wave began as Municipal Community Preparedness Day. During the official ceremony, the mayor gave an emotional speech. Marcus Thompson taught us that heroism isn't just about saving people in danger. It's also about preventing them from getting into danger. Marcus was invited to speak to an audience that included families from across the region. 5 years ago, I was just a mechanic worried about protecting his family. Today, I see hundreds of families who have learned to protect each other. That is far more important than any individual recognition. He looked at the audience. Emergency preparedness isn't about being afraid of the future. It's about having enough hope to invest in the safety of those we love. Marcus paused emotionally. And about understanding that our strength doesn't come from facing difficulties alone. Our strength comes from facing difficulties together. After the speech, a child of about 10 years old approached with his parents. "Mr. Thompson, my parents built tires around our house just like you did. Can I see your tires?" "Of course you can," Marcus replied, smiling. During the visit to his home, the child made an observation that touched Marcus. "Mr. Thompson, the tires are ugly on the outside, but they make the house beautiful on the inside because they protect the people we love." Marcus crouched down to the child's level. "You know something? That is one of the smartest things anyone has ever said to me about this project." "Why?" "Because sometimes the most important things aren't the prettiest, but they are the most effective at protecting those we love." That night, Marcus talked with his family about the years that had passed. "Everyone, do you think all this work is worth it?" Ethan answered first. "Dad, through your project, I discovered my professional calling. I want to work on environmental solutions for families." Noah also spoke up. "And I discovered I can use communication to teach important things. I want to do more educational projects." Jennifer gave her opinion. "Marcus, I learned to trust your instincts more. And I learned that sometimes love means supporting someone, even when we don't fully understand their motivations." Marcus looked at his family with gratitude. "I learned that difficult childhood experiences can transform into strength to protect other families, and that when we share knowledge, we multiply protection." 6 years after the event, Marcus received a call that changed his perspective once again. "Marcus? It's Amanda." Marcus nearly dropped the phone. It was the voice of his younger sister, whom he believed he had lost in childhood. "Amanda, how did you get my number?" "I saw you on television talking about preparing for climate emergencies. I recognized you immediately." Marcus felt his eyes fill with tears. "Amanda, I thought that you hadn't survived pneumonia?" "I did survive, but our parents separated soon after and each took one child. Mom took me to New York and we lost contact. Marcus had to sit down. Amanda, you have no idea how many times I've thought of you all these years. Marcus, I need to tell you something. When I saw you talking about using traumatic experiences to protect other families, I understood why you chose this path. What do you mean? Because I'm dedicated to that too, Marcus. I'm a pediatrician, and I work on preventing respiratory diseases in children. Marcus couldn't speak for a few moments. You mean that we both transformed that terrible winter of '88 into motivation to protect other people? You through physical preparedness, me through medical preparedness. This discovery completely transformed Marcus's understanding of his own history. During their reunion weeks later, Amanda met the whole family and the project. Marcus, when I saw your tire construction, I understood the logic perfectly. It's applied prevention. Amanda, it's incredible to think that we're both working on the same thing, but in different ways. And the most incredible part is that our traumatic childhood experience turned into a life calling for both of us. Amanda integrated naturally into the family's project. Marcus, can I suggest an expansion? Of course. What kind of expansion? Include basic medical preparedness in your training program. Teach first aid, how to recognize symptoms of hypothermia, how to store medications in extreme temperatures. Amanda, that would be perfect. Physical preparedness and medical preparedness together. Jennifer was moved by the family reunion. Marcus, it's as if the whole project was meant to bring you two together again. 7 years after the original event, Marcus and Amanda launched an integrated emergency preparedness program together. The program combined physical protection through thermal insulation techniques with medical protection through basic health training. During the launch, Marcus reflected, I discovered my sister was alive and working toward the same purpose as me, just in a different way. This taught me that sometimes our destinies are connected in ways we cannot see, Amanda added. And it taught me that shared, difficult experiences can transform into shared strength to help others. The program became a national model for community preparedness. Ethan, now a graduate in environmental engineering, developed a technological version of the protection system. Dad, I created an app that helps families calculate exactly how many tires they need, based on the size of their house and the region's climate. Noah, who has a degree in communications, created a series of educational videos that went viral on social media. Dad, your videos on emergency preparedness have been viewed by over 1 million people. Jennifer became the national coordinator of the project, organizing trainings across the country. Marcus, I never imagined our family would become a national reference in community preparedness. Mrs. Dorothy, now 75 years old, continued living on the same street and actively participating in the project. Marcus, you turned our neighborhood into the best prepared place in the country. Now everyone wants to live here because they know we're safe. Mr. Gerald became a volunteer instructor, teaching preparedness techniques to new residents. Marcus, I'm sorry once again for doubting you in the beginning. Now I'm the one evangelizing about the importance of preparedness. Mrs. Anderson, who had retired, continued using Marcus's story as an example in educational talks. Mr. Marcus's story proves that education doesn't only happen in school, it happens when committed people share practical knowledge. 8 years after the event, Marcus was invited to speak at a world conference on climate change. His presentation, titled From Personal Trauma to Community Protection, was considered one of the most impactful of the event. My story began with the fear of an 8-year-old child who lost his home in a severe winter. Today, 8 years after turning that fear into action, hundreds of communities around the world use techniques based on what I learned. Marcus showed photos of projects inspired by his work. This technique is being used against hurricanes in the Caribbean, against heat waves in Africa, against floods in Asia. The principle is always the same: community preparedness based on observing nature and cooperation between neighbors. An audience participant asked a question. Mr. Marcus, what is the main lesson you've learned on this journey? Marcus thought carefully before answering. That our most difficult experiences can become our greatest contribution to the world, but only if we are willing to turn pain into wisdom and wisdom into service to others. After the conference, Marcus was approached by international organizations interested in implementing his program, but he had one condition for any partnership. Our program must always be free for low-income families, and it must always involve the local community in the implementation process. Why is that condition important to you? Asked a UN representative. Because emergency preparedness cannot be a privilege for those with resources, and because protection only truly works when the entire community is involved. Back in the United States, Marcus organized a meeting with his entire expanded team. Team, we've reached a point where we need to decide the project's next steps. Amanda presented the numbers. Our program has already directly benefited over 15,000 families across the country, and indirectly, many more. Ethan showed the technical developments. We now have versions adapted for 12 different types of climate emergencies. Noah presented the communication results. Our methodology is being taught in over 200 schools. Jennifer gave the organizational overview. And we have established partnerships with 60 city halls for implementing local programs. Marcus looked at his team with pride. When I started stacking tires around our house, I just wanted to protect you four. I never imagined it would turn into a life's mission. And what's the next step? Asked Amanda. The next step is to ensure this project continues to grow even after we are no longer here to coordinate it. Marcus explained his vision. I want to create a foundation that guarantees the continuity of the work, and I want to train a new generation of instructors who can take these techniques to places we've never reached. 9 years after the original event, Marcus officially inaugurated the Nature's Signs Foundation. The inauguration ceremony was held at the very spot where he had stacked the first tires. Hundreds of people who had benefited from the program attended the ceremony. Marcus gave an emotional speech. 9 years ago, my neighbors thought I had lost my mind stacking tires around my house. Today, techniques based on that idea are protecting families on 4 continents. He looked at the audience. This didn't happen because I'm special. It happened because each one of you believed it's worth preparing to protect those we love, and because we understood our strength lies in working together. Marcus paused emotionally. The Nature's Signs Foundation will ensure that children who are 8 years old today, like I was when I lost my first home, grow up knowing how to protect their families from climate emergencies. During the ceremony, testimonials from program beneficiaries were read. A letter from a family in the southern states said, Mr. Marcus, the techniques we learned from your program saved us during an extreme drought. Our water collection and storage system, based on your principles, kept our family hydrated when our neighbors had to abandon their homes. A family from the northern region wrote, during an unprecedented heat wave, our natural ventilation system, based on your teachings, kept our house livable when the air conditioning failed. Each testimonial confirmed that the original concept had expanded far beyond protection from the cold. 10 years after the original event, Marcus organized a special meeting to mark the project's decade. He invited all the original neighbors who had sheltered in his house during that week of extreme cold. Mr. Gerald, now 65, gave a speech representing the group. Marcus, 10 years ago you saved us physically from that terrible cold, but more than that, you taught us the importance of preparing and taking care of each other. Mrs. Dorothy, 80 years old, also wanted to speak. Marcus, you transformed our street into an example of community. Today everyone here knows they can count on their neighbors in any emergency. During the celebration, Marcus received a special surprise. City Hall announced that his street had been renamed Community Preparedness Street. Mr. Marcus, said the mayor, this street has become a national symbol of how communities can organize to face adversity. Marcus was moved, but made a point to clarify. This honor isn't just for me. It's for all the neighbors who learned to work together. It's for my family who supported me even when it seemed crazy. It's for everyone who turned skepticism into cooperation. That evening, Marcus walked down the street looking at the neighbors' houses. Several of them maintained some kind of protection system, adapted to each family's specific needs. Mrs. Dorothy maintained her emergency heating system. Mr. Gerald had become an expert in supply storage. Other families had developed complementary specializations, emergency communication, first aid, community resource management. "Jennifer," Marcus said to his wife, "look at what happened. It's not just about tires around houses, it's about people around each other. Marcus, do you realize you achieved something rare? You turned an ordinary street into a true community." "We did it, Jennifer, because this only worked because everyone participated." That night, Marcus reflected on the complete journey. 10 years earlier, he was a 45-year-old mechanic, haunted by traumatic childhood memories. Today, he was the coordinator of an international foundation that taught community preparedness for climate emergencies. His work had directly impacted the lives of thousands of families and indirectly influenced public emergency preparedness policies. But more important than any external recognition was what had happened within his own family. Ethan had become an engineer specializing in environmental solutions for vulnerable communities. Noah had become a communicator dedicated to education about community preparedness. Amanda had not only found a brother again, but a shared purpose of transforming difficult experiences into protection for other families. Jennifer had become a nationally respected community leader, and Marcus had finally transformed his most painful, traumatic experience into the source of his greatest contribution to the world. 11 years after the event, Marcus received a special invitation. The local university wanted to confer upon him the title of Doctor Honoris Causa in recognition of his contribution to community protection. During the ceremony, Marcus gave his most personal speech. "Ladies and gentlemen, this title is an unexpected honor for someone who only completed high school. But I accept this tribute on behalf of all the families who transformed fear into preparedness and preparedness into community protection." He looked at the academic audience. "The university teaches me today that true knowledge doesn't come only from books. It comes from the combination of lived experience, careful observation of reality, and the willingness to share wisdom with others." Marcus paused emotionally. "When I piled the first tires around my house, I was trying to protect 4 people, my wife and my 2 children. Today, techniques based on that decision protect thousands of families around the world." He concluded, "This teaches me that no problem is too small to be important, and no person is too ordinary to make an extraordinary difference in the lives of others." After the ceremony, Marcus was approached by university students interested in continuing to develop his techniques. "Professor Marcus," said an engineering student, "can I do my thesis on the mathematical optimization of your protection systems?" "Of course, but remember, the goal isn't to create perfect systems. The goal is to create systems that real families can implement with limited resources," a medical student asked. "Professor, can I research health protocols for climate emergencies based on your sister's work?" "Absolutely, but always thinking about how to teach those protocols to people without medical training." A communication student wanted to study community education methods. "Professor Marcus, how do you manage to teach technical concepts to people with little formal schooling?" Marcus smiled. "It's simple. You start with what they already know, use examples from their daily lives, and always explain why that information will protect someone they love." 12 years after the event, Marcus decided to write a second book. This one would be more personal, telling the full story from his childhood to the present moment. "Jennifer, I want to tell the whole story, including the most painful parts." "Why, Marcus?" "Because I want people who have been through trauma to understand that it's possible to transform pain into purpose." The book, titled From Fear to Protection: How a Traumatic Experience Became a Life Mission, became a national bestseller. During an interview about the book, Marcus was asked about his greatest achievement. "Mr. Marcus, among all your achievements, which do you consider the most important?" Marcus thought carefully. "Proving to myself that it's possible to transform the most painful experience of my life into the source of my greatest contribution to other people." "And what was the moment of greatest personal satisfaction?" "When my sister Amanda called me, and I discovered that she had also transformed our shared traumatic experience into a calling to protect other families. In that moment, I understood that shared pain, when transformed into wisdom, multiplies into protection." 13 years after the event, Marcus organized an international conference in his city. Experts from all over the world came to see the place where it all began and to learn about implementing community preparedness. During the conference, Marcus gave a special presentation showing photos of the evolution of his street over the years. This is my street in 2011, when I started stacking tires. Look at the neighbors' expressions of distrust. This is the same street in 2024, 13 years later. You can see that each house has developed its own preparedness system, adapted to the specific needs of each family. But the most important thing isn't the physical systems. It's that these people have learned to trust each other, to communicate about preparedness, and to work together when facing difficulties. A conference participant made an important observation. Professor Marcus, your work proves that solutions for climate change don't have to come only from advanced technology. They can come from applied wisdom and community cooperation. Exactly, Marcus replied. And most importantly, solutions based on community cooperation are sustainable because the people themselves become the guardians of the technology. During the conference, cases of implementing Marcus's method in different cultural and climatic contexts were presented. A representative from Bangladesh showed how the techniques were adapted for flood protection. We used Professor Marcus's multi-layer isolation principle, but with sandbags instead of tires. The result is the same: effective protection using local materials. A representative from Kenya explained the adaptation for heat waves. We implemented natural ventilation systems based on Professor Marcus's concepts. Families use recycled materials to create air currents that reduce the indoor temperature by up to 15 degrees. Each presentation confirmed that the fundamental principle was correct: observation of nature, use of local materials, and community cooperation. 14 years after the event, Marcus received news he considered the greatest honor of his life. The UN invited him to be a special consultant in community preparedness for climate change. Professor Marcus, said the organization's representative, we want to implement your model in vulnerable communities around the world. It's an honor to participate, but I have some conditions. What are they? First, the program must always be implemented by people from the community itself, trained by us, but not dependent on us. Second condition, it must always be adapted to the local culture. We don't export ready-made solutions. We export principles that each community adapts to its own reality. Third condition, it must always include training for local youth to become independent instructors. The goal is to create autonomy, not dependence. The UN representative smiled. Professor Marcus, these conditions show why your work has been so successful. You understand that true sustainability comes from community empowerment. 15 years after the original event, Marcus organized a special celebration. He invited all the people who had participated in the journey: the original neighbors, foundation collaborators, program beneficiaries, and experts who had studied the project. During the celebration, he reflected on the 15 years. In 2011, I stacked tires around my house because I was afraid my family would be cold. Today, 15 years later, programs based on those tires protect communities in 60 countries. This didn't happen by magic. It happened because every person here decided it's worth preparing to protect those we love, and that our strength lies in working together. Marcus looked at his family. Jennifer supported me even when I seemed to have lost my mind. Ethan and Noah turned embarrassment into pride, and today they are leaders in their own specialties. Amanda found a brother again and found a shared purpose. He looked at the neighbors. You taught me that initial skepticism can turn into lasting cooperation when people see real results. He looked at the Foundation's collaborators. You took a simple idea and turned it into a global movement of community preparedness, Marcus concluded. The most important thing I've learned in these 15 years is that our greatest protection doesn't come from barriers we build around ourselves. It comes from the connections we build with each other. During the party, a child of about 10 years old approached Marcus. Mr. Marcus, can I ask a question? Of course, sweetheart. What is it? Were you scared when everyone said you were wrong? Marcus crouched down to the girl's height, I was very scared, yes. Scared of being wrong, scared that people wouldn't understand me, scared that my family would be ashamed of me. Then how did you keep going even though you were scared? Because I had an even greater fear. The fear that something would happen to the people I love because I didn't do everything I could to protect them. The child thought for a moment. So sometimes we need to have the courage to be scared? Marcus smiled. That's one of the smartest things anyone has ever said to me. Yes, sometimes we need to have the courage to feel fear when that fear motivates us to protect those we love. That night, after the celebration, Marcus walked alone through his property. The original tires were still there, now integrated into the landscaping as hanging gardens and composting systems. The house had transformed into a kind of demonstration center, visited by experts and families interested in learning about community preparedness. But for Marcus, it remained simply his home, the place where he had decided to do everything necessary to protect his family. As he walked, he reflected on the entire journey. 15 years earlier, he was a man haunted by the trauma of losing his home in childhood. Today, he was a global reference in community protection, but the most important transformation hadn't been external. The most important transformation had been internal, from trauma victim to family protector. Marcus stopped in front of the first tires he had stacked, now covered with plants and flowers. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for working. Thank you for helping me turn fear into protection." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the plants growing between the tires. It was as if nature itself was responding, reminding him that it was always willing to cooperate with those who knew how to observe its signs and work in harmony with it. Marcus entered the house knowing that his journey was not yet over. There were still many families to protect, many communities to teach, many young people to train as new instructors. But now he knew, with absolute certainty, that he was on the right path. The traumatic fear from his childhood had transformed into the wisdom of his adult life, and that wisdom would continue protecting families long after he was no longer here to teach in person. In the end, the true protection he had built wasn't made of tires around a house. It was made of shared knowledge, strengthened communities and families prepared to care for one another, and that was far more durable than any physical structure. It was a protection that multiplied with every person taught, every community organized, every family that learned to transform fear into preparedness. 15 years after stacking the first tires around his home, Marcus finally fully understood what he had accomplished. He hadn't just protected his family from that harsh winter. He had created a legacy of protection that would continue growing and spreading far beyond his own existence. And perhaps that was the truest form of turning trauma into purpose, to create something that protects not only the people we love today, but the people others will love in the future. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story of overcoming adversity and family preparedness. Did Marcus make the right decision by building this protection, even while facing criticism? How would you prepare to protect your family in extreme situations? Share your opinion in the comments. We love reading your reflections. If this story touched your heart, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories about family, perseverance, and love.